on the floor, maybe create on his own with his length. Give me a player composition for the young man from Georgia.
For skill set wise, I see some Luke May, specifically in terms of being able to stretch the floor, knock down the outside shot. And then, inside he reminds me a little bit more of Tyler Zeller, kind of a back-to-the-basket type post player, has a little bit of a jump hook, certainly can score from multiple areas of the court. He's very efficient with his scoring, shoots a very high percentage. So I think that he'll bring a lot of kind of a combination, if you will. Obviously has significantly more size than Luke May does. So he'll have the ability, I think, to stretch it even a little bit more and force the opposing team's low post players to either go out there or dare him to shoot the three, which he can definitely knock down.
You bring up Tyler Zeller as a comparison on this back-to-the-basket game. Can he run the floor as good as Tyler Zeller could? Because that was the one thing. I think he's the best running floor big man Roy Williams has had.
Yeah, I'd say it's very similar. He's got good footwork. He gets up and down the court, and definitely I think that he'll, in the way that Carolina uses their bigs and their secondary transition, I think that he will definitely be, he'll benefit from those options, and he will play, again, a very similar Tyler Zeller type role. But I think that yes, he has every bit to the ability to run the floor as well as Tyler Zeller did.
Okay. Hey, I love big guys that can run the floor. We brought up his versatility and what it can bring to the lineup. Do you think there's a way that he could be a starter and we can move Garrison Brooks to the 4 where he's a more natural position player at the 4 instead of the 5?
That's an interesting question. I don't see it happening. I think that right now, we touched on a little bit earlier with the backcourt of starting potentially 2 freshmen there. I just don't see it happening. I think that Garrison Brooks absolutely, as you mentioned, has the 4 position locked up, and I think that Armando Bacot, it is absolutely his position at the 5 to lose as far as starting. So, although I think that Kessler and Sharp, which we'll get to, definitely will play some important minutes and will get rotational minutes. As talented as he is, I do not see Kessler necessarily working his way into the starting lineup to beat him this season.
You mentioned Day'Ron Sharp, and let's go ahead and move on and talk about him. 6'10", big guy, 246 pounds out of Winterville, North Carolina. It was a really big get for Carolina because he was an in-state recruit. And with all the NCAA stuff, they've kind of missed out on some of those guys in the past couple years. Give me a player composition for the first big man that committed to Roy Williams in this year's class.
Yeah, my player comp there was Sean May, and that was mainly because of the way that he just dominates the paint. You mentioned that one of the moments that sticks with you as a Carolina fan was the 2005 game. I think that we all know what Sean May brought to that game specifically, and how it dominated the paint, not only in that game, but against, I believe it was Michigan State in the Final Four that year. And I think that's the type of player that Day'Ron Sharp can and will develop into. His motor is absolutely off the charts. He is an absolute wrecking force on the boards. He has developed his ability to score around the basket. His last 2 years of high school, he's gotten far more efficient there. He's played against really good talent in his senior season of high school, so he is definitely ready to come in and, again, compete for minutes. I don't see him necessarily assuming a starting role either, but it's definitely going to be fun to watch the front court of Bacot and Brooks, and then hopefully coming in together, Sharp and Kessler.
You bring up, what he can do, putting the ball in the basket, his motor, etc., and you don't believe that he's going to push for starting minutes, and I don't think he will be either. But there's going to be times he's going to be paired with either Garrison Brooks or Armando Bacot. Who do you think he will fit better beside?
I think Sharp fits better a little bit beside Brooks because he can play his natural position of the 5, and Brooks, again, will be at his natural position of 4, and the two, they complement each other very well. And I also, honestly, the other pair that kind of creates is Kessler and Bacot, and that allows Kessler to spend more time out a little bit on the perimeter, again, stretching the floor.
Yeah, I think one thing that also, I've been thinking about all off season long is there's going to be a lot of competition at the front court for those minutes. We've seen some rumors about Armando Bacot working out already with Caleb Love. These two guys coming on campus might push us to get the Armando Bacot that we thought we were getting last year when he was a 5-star big man from ING Academy down in Florida. And if Carolina's running out Garrison Brooks, the Armando Bacot that's healthy, in shape, and finishing around the rim, and these two bigs coming in, it's going to be hard to pick against them to win a lot of games, and you're not going to be as concerned about them putting the ball in the basket from the perimeter. But one guy that can put the ball in the basket is Donovan Puff Johnson, the younger brother of former Tar Heel Cam Johnson. I'm going to go ahead and assume that was your player comp right off the bat, correct?
Yes, that was one of my player comps. I believe it was him and Kenny Williams.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense, I guess. And this isn't a fair question to Puff because how good his brother shot the ball. Can he shoot the ball as good as Cam did?
Yeah, that's kind of like the Kobe situation earlier of can Caleb Love have the season that Kobe White had. I think, again, what Cam Johnson was able to come in for Carolina and do for the time that he was there was unbelievable, especially the role that he played there. And yes, I would say that Puff, with time, will have the ability to shoot as good as Cam did. I think that Cam had over time, he developed the ability to kind of get to the basket, more of a mid-range jumper, certainly always knocked down the three for us. Did an overall awesome job, and I do believe that Puff will grow into that. He's already 6'7", so he's coming in. That's tremendous size to have at potentially the 2 spot. I would see him playing more of a 3, but definitely, he has a knack for kind of finding the open spot on the floor, settling in, and if teammates are able to find him, hopefully Caleb Love in this situation, they'll know to knock down that open shot when he has it.
Well, you touched on something that I was going to ask you, and you mentioned at 6'7", a lot of times you see those guys play the small forward position. There was a time when his brother was on campus that Roy Williams could slide him to the 2 and use Leaky Black at the 3. Does Puff Johnson kind of, allow that kind of availability to play the 2 or the 3 guard position?
He does, yes, very much so. He can go back and forth, and I kind of look at that a little bit, and I think I wrote about this in one of the articles between Puff Johnson and Kerwin Walton, and just the pure shooting ability that the two of them bring makes us as Carolina fans hopefully wonder and hope that they can grow into the shooting duo that was Wayne Ellington and Danny Green. We all know how interchangeable they were, how efficient they were, and I think that in time, again, I don't want fans to think that next year these two running out there will present that opportunity, but definitely provide more scoring options, far more efficient shooting than we saw on the floor at times last year.
And you mentioned Kerwin Walton. He's the final guy of the 2020 recruiting class that we're going to talk about. And his recruitment was one that was extremely wild. He initially delayed it, and Carolina fans were convinced that he was the missing piece to a class that didn't have a whole lot to complain about, but our fan base still found a way to not be happy with what Roy Williams had until we got his commitment. And you mentioned his ability to shoot the ball. Who was his player comp for you?
Danny Green and Reggie Bull came to my mind. I would even throw in there Kenny Williams. Somebody who gets after it on the defensive end, absolutely has the ability to shoot the 3. That's what's so unique and fun about this class is in general. You have Caleb Love who can shoot the 3. You have R.J. Davis who shoots the 3. Kerwin Walton, Puff Johnson. All of those guys can score through multiple different ways, whether it's shooting from the basket, finishing at the rim, knocking down from the charity stripe. They all have multiple different options, which makes me so much more excited for next year because, as we know, last year it was kind of tough to come by some scoring at times. We had the long droughts.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right about that. It was kind of weird seeing Carolina have the struggles they had at putting the ball in the basket consistently. What is Kerwin Walton's role year one? Because there's a lot going on in the backcourt, and there's some guys that have got experience ahead of him. Is he going to be a contributor right away, or is he going to have to kind of fight and scratch and claw his way to have some playing minutes?
I think he'll get his opportunities. I think that, from watching the games, we all kind of know how Roy works and what he looks for in his players and when they get the opportunities. I think non-conference, he'll get 3 to 4 minute spurts in the first half, and depending on how he does with those minutes, that could dictate a little bit what his role plays in the second half. I think anytime you can score the ball as well as he can, as efficiently as he can, he's always got to be considered an option. But for the first time in quite some time, Carolina has some depth, some good depth at the wing position. So, I don't necessarily expect Walton to step in and compete for a starting role, because I think that, between the 2 and the 3, that's kind of wrapped up between R.J. Davis, Leakey, and Anthony Harris. But I do look for both him and Puff Johnson to compete for rotational minutes, and we'll see what they do with it, what their role is or how it's defined come February and March.
Since it doesn't appear that he's going to have a large role his first year on campus, is Walton a guy that for 3 to 4 years Roy Williams can pencil in, knowing he's going to be on the roster, going to be in the lineup, and can kind of recruit and build the backcourt around his availability and what his talent possesses?
Yeah, and that's kind of the fun thing about this class, too, is I definitely see Walton as a 3 to 4 year player. I think Puff Johnson is definitely probably a 2 or 3 year player. R.J. Davis, depending on how he does, 2 to 3 year player. If there is one and done opportunities, I'd say that's probably best Caleb Love, and then Jaron Sharp. And as far as Walker Kessler, I predict him to be a 2 or 3 year player also. So you kind of have that good mix of elite talent that has the opportunity, if it plays out the way that we as Carolina fans hope it does, for them guys to leave and to kind of keep that baton going at the point guard position. But you also can look at it as a foundational recruiting class that will be here for some time. It'll similar to the classes of, Tyler Hansbrough and Danny Green, the ones that they came in, Sean May, McCants, and Felton in 05. All those national championship teams had a foundational recruiting class that led them to where they got. And I think this class has the opportunity to evolve into one of those foundational recruiting classes also.
Well, I didn't put this on our rundown, but it's the last thing I wanted to ask you. You just brought up the point about how all 3 national title winning teams had foundational recruiting classes. My question to you is this. Is this the best recruiting class Roy Williams has brought in now his 16 years in Chapel Hill?
I think it compares very closely with the 2014 class. I think that this one, if I had to choose them, I would say that, yes, this one is the most talented, most important, and I say that for multiple reasons. We all know and experience the recruiting cloud that we've had for the past 3 to 4 years, and how we had to kind of, if you want to say, settle for some less than Carolina-type players in the past. And this class is hopefully the class that proves Carolina recruiting is and always has been at an elite level. Roy still has the ability to get the talent that he wants, the high caliber players that he wants, and the ones that fit his system the best. So it'll be fun to see how this class evolves. I think anytime you put too much pressure on a recruiting class and they feel that they have to perform to expectations, it depends on what we have for expectations as fans. I definitely expect us to be far more competitive in games next year. I think it'll look more like the Carolina teams that we're used to seeing as far as up and down, high scoring, get after it defensively, although that's not necessarily a staple of Carolina. But we do have some people in this class that are really good, underrated defenders, and I think that they'll have the opportunity to shine and grow into their roles, and if they're able to play their roles, it will be fun to hopefully be competing for a title again here within hopefully next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, one thing I have stressed all season as we were bringing in this talent, and as we're gearing up for the upcoming season, they are just freshmen, and there aren't many flaws that Roy Williams has as a head coach. If he has one, it's that he doesn't always get freshman talent to play at a high level for the length of their career, outside of Tyler Hansbrough, maybe Brandon Wright, Kobe White of recent. It's not one of his strong suits, but he's got a lot of talent to work with, and he's always said he loves to have talent because he can coach it as good as anybody, and now he's got a lot of it in Chapel Hill, and hopefully, like you said, it all works out to where Carolina's competing to win an ACC